As we shall hear in a minute from Vicky, we are putting our efforts as a charity into leveraging the unique power of books to help rebuild lives.
A quiet storm is brewing behind palace walls, one that could redefine the future of the British monarchy. Prince William has made a bold and unexpected move, stripping Queen Camilla's family of royal privileges. Was it a calculated step toward modernizing the crown, or a deeply personal act rooted in old wounds? What really happened, and why now? Tensions appear to be rising once again inside the British royal family, this time centered around a highly sensitive issue: the removal of royal privileges from Queen Camilla's family. Reports from multiple insiders have sparked widespread conversation about what's really happening behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace. According to those familiar with the matter, Prince William has taken a direct step in reshaping royal protocol by limiting or entirely removing ceremonial recognition and informal access previously extended to members of Camilla's family. The decision, described by some as firm but fair, has reportedly triggered a strong reaction from Queen Camilla, who is said to have been deeply upset. The situation has reignited debate around tradition, succession, and who should be considered part of the royal inner circle. While the monarchy is no stranger to internal tension, this particular move stands out due to its personal implications and the subtle but far-reaching shifts it may represent within the royal household. What stands out most is the way this decision appears to have been made and communicated. According to palace sources, the changes were not preceded by extensive discussions or negotiations between Prince William and Queen Camilla. Instead, they were reportedly implemented through official channels as part of a broader plan to streamline the monarchy. Camilla, upon learning of the decision, is believed to have reacted emotionally. Accounts from inside Clarence House describe her as shocked, hurt, and angry. An aide reportedly overheard her saying she felt erased, not only personally, but on behalf of her entire family. It's a significant claim, considering that over the past 2 decades, Camilla's children and grandchildren have quietly gained visibility within royal circles, even if they were never granted formal titles. The sudden reversal of this growing presence has raised questions about timing, motivation, and what Prince William's vision for the monarchy really entails. Observers familiar with royal protocol point out that Camilla's family, including her children Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, have never been in the official line of succession. However, over the years, they've been seen at significant royal events, seated near senior royals, and referred to in palace documents. It's important to note that these were largely symbolic gestures, not constitutional appointments. Still, they carried weight in public perception, and their visibility contributed to a growing narrative that Camilla's family was becoming part of the monarchy's extended identity. For Prince William, that narrative may have gone too far. According to insiders, he has long advocated for a more focused and clearly defined monarchy, one that reflects the original principles of hereditary succession and minimizes public confusion about who represents the crown. From his perspective, the inclusion of Camilla's family in ceremonial roles, even in a limited capacity, may have blurred those lines. The situation is even more complex given King Charles's health concerns. In recent months, Prince William has taken on more public-facing responsibilities, stepping in for his father at state events and holding private meetings with senior royal aides. Some commentators see these actions as part of a natural transition as William prepares for his future role. But this specific move, removing the honorary privileges of Camilla's family, feels less like a routine duty and more like the opening move in a new era of leadership. Camilla, who has worked for years to earn public acceptance, is now reportedly feeling sidelined. Her journey from being criticized by the public to becoming queen consort has been long and difficult. For her, this decision appears to undermine not only her family, but her own legacy within the monarchy. Though she holds the title of queen, the revocation of recognition for her family could be interpreted as a signal that her role is ceremonial rather than foundational. It's also worth noting the emotional toll such changes can take. While the royal family is known for keeping personal matters private, some staff members have shared glimpses into Camilla's emotional response. One insider described her as visibly distressed, saying that she canceled public engagements and withdrew from her usual schedule. Another claimed she repeatedly asked why there had been no conversation before the decision was carried out, and questioned whether she was being punished for her past. Publicly, there has been no official confirmation or denial from the palace about the exact nature of the changes. However, adjustments to royal protocols, seating charts, and ceremonial roles often speak for themselves. In recent state events, observers have noted the absence of Camilla's grandchildren and a shift in how her family is referenced in official communications. These small but meaningful changes support the idea that a reset is underway, one that places emphasis squarely on bloodline, duty, and constitutional relevance. For many royal watchers, this development raises larger questions about the future of the monarchy. Is this about preserving tradition, or is it a reaction to past controversy? Does this mark a new approach to leadership, one that values structure over sentiment? Prince William has not spoken publicly about the matter, but those close to him suggest that he views the monarchy as an institution that must evolve in order to survive. That evolution, in his view, involves narrowing its focus and reducing the influence of those without direct ties to the crown. What makes this situation particularly sensitive is the implication that past gestures of inclusion were mistakes, or at least incompatible with the monarchy's future. Camilla's efforts to integrate her family were seen by some as a reflection of a more modern, blended royal household. But for others, including perhaps William, they may have represented a drift from what the monarchy is meant to stand for. The move has sparked debate among royal commentators and the public alike. Some argue that William is right to restore clarity and reduce perceived privilege among non-royal relatives. Others believe the decision lacks compassion, especially toward a woman who has endured intense public scrutiny and still earned her place beside the king. It's also unclear how King Charles himself feels about the decision. While he's said to be supportive of a leaner monarchy, insiders suggest he was caught off guard by the speed and decisiveness of this particular change. He has not publicly responded to reports of Camilla's distress, nor has he addressed the broader implications for the royal family's public image. While Camilla's marriage to then Prince Charles in 2005 made her a formal member of the royal family, it did not automatically extend royal status to her children or grandchildren. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, a food writer and critic, and her daughter, Laura Lopes, who works in the art world, have always maintained relatively private lives. They were not granted titles and never held any formal royal roles. Still, over the years, they began to appear more frequently at royal events and were quietly included in moments of significance. The changes were subtle at first. Camilla's children were seen attending royal family gatherings, seated just a few rows away from high-ranking royals. Invitations were extended to exclusive royal residences. Some staff began to refer to them informally as part of the Queen's family. These were not constitutional decisions, but cultural shifts within palace life, changes that, while unofficial, were visible to anyone paying close attention. The shift became more noticeable in the years following Camilla's growing public approval. As she took on more responsibilities and showed consistent support for King Charles's duties, her reputation slowly improved. By the 2010s, Camilla was no longer just the controversial figure from royal scandals of the past. She had become an active, respected part of the monarchy. With her increasing presence came more subtle inclusion of her family. This included occasional mentions in royal press briefings, strategic seating at public events, and private family appearances at important milestones. While these inclusions never crossed into official titles or succession rights, they did reflect a gradual normalization of Camilla's relatives within royal spaces. The most notable moment in this shift came during King Charles III's coronation in 2023. In a move that surprised many observers, Camilla's grandsons, Gus and Louis Lopes, as well as Freddie Parker Bowles, were chosen to serve as pages of honor. This role, traditionally reserved for young boys from aristocratic families or direct royal descendants, signaled a major step in visibility for Camilla's family. The inclusion was symbolic, but to some insiders, it also crossed a previously unwritten boundary. According to people close to the royal household, This decision sparked private concern. While not publicly criticized at the time, it reportedly prompted conversations among senior aides and even among some working royals. The message, according to those familiar with royal tradition, was that Camilla's family was not just being welcomed, they were being legitimized. This subtle campaign, some say, had been building for years. It wasn't just about giving her family a place at the table. It was about shaping how the public saw them. Royal photographers were quietly asked to capture more images of Camilla's grandchildren during events. Public relations officers reportedly received guidance to mention her children in official briefings. While none of this indicated a change in royal hierarchy, it reflected a growing presence in the background of royal life. Palace insiders differ in their opinions about Camilla's intentions. Some describe her as a grandmother who simply wanted her family to feel included and respected. Others argue that she had a long-term plan to gradually build a legacy for her children and grandchildren within the royal environment. Whatever the motive, the result was the same. Camilla's family had become regular figures at events traditionally reserved for those with royal blood. Prince William, according to those close to him, became increasingly uneasy with this trend. He and his wife, Catherine, Princess of Wales, have long believed in a more focused, streamlined monarchy. Their vision aligns with what Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip are said to have championed. A small group of royals, all directly related by blood, carrying out official duties on behalf of the crown. For William, the increasing visibility of Camilla's family blurred this clear structure. As William's role within the monarchy has grown, especially in light of his father's health, he has begun shaping the institution in subtle but meaningful ways. He is described by insiders as strategic and pragmatic, with a clear sense of what the monarchy should represent. From that perspective, the involvement of Camilla's family in royal ceremonies, no matter how symbolic, was a complication he felt needed to be addressed. It's important to highlight that William's issue wasn't personal animosity toward Camilla's family. Those familiar with his views say his concerns were institutional. He believed that the royal family should be rooted in lineage and constitutional duty, not sentiment or convenience. The presence of step-grandchildren and in-laws, even in informal roles, could be seen as undermining that principle. Camilla, meanwhile, reportedly saw her actions as part of a broader vision for a modern monarchy. She is said to have viewed the inclusion of her family not as a threat to tradition, but as a reflection of today's blended families. She reportedly advocated, sometimes quietly and sometimes more directly, for ceremonial roles, honorary mentions, and even residential privileges for her children. Most of these efforts were denied or delayed, but the intent behind them was clear. Camilla hoped her family would be remembered as more than just footnotes in royal history. Behind palace walls, these competing visions began to create quiet friction. One side sought a monarchy that was modern and inclusive, even if symbolically so. The other side, led by William, argued for clarity, heritage, and a return to traditional lines of succession and representation. For a long time, the conflict remained under the surface. There were no public arguments, no official statements, just a slow buildup of tension. William reportedly kept his concerns private, preferring to wait until he had the authority to make changes. That moment appears to have arrived. By removing the ceremonial roles and recognition previously extended to Camilla's family, William sent a clear message. In his view, the monarchy must remain focused on its constitutional role. Personal ties, no matter how close, do not translate into public responsibility or institutional presence. The roles available within the monarchy are limited and must be reserved for those who inherit them by birth. Some royal watchers see this as a necessary course correction. They argue that the monarchy had drifted too far into sentiment and symbolic favoritism, risking public confusion and even resentment. Others, however, view the move as overly harsh, particularly given Camilla's efforts to support her husband and the crown over many years. The consequences are still unfolding. For Camilla, the removal of her family from royal ceremonies is reportedly not just disappointing, it's deeply hurtful. She has worked hard to be accepted, and in her mind, her family was part of that journey. Now they're being asked to step back, quietly and without fanfare. For Prince William, however, this decision may be just the beginning. If his goal is to reshape the monarchy into a more efficient and clearly defined institution, similar steps could follow. As he continues to take on more responsibility, his influence is growing, and so is his ability to set the tone for the future. According to multiple palace insiders, this move was not spontaneous. It was planned, calculated, and part of a broader initiative to reshape the monarchy into something leaner, more traditional, and less influenced by personal relationships. For William, this is not about family disputes or emotional grudges. It's about what he sees as the long-term credibility and sustainability of the royal institution. Those close to William say he has long been concerned about the monarchy's public image. He is aware of how it is perceived, particularly among younger generations, and he pays close attention to public opinion. Polling data, media coverage, and social media commentary all play a role in how decisions are approached. Over the years, a common theme has emerged. Many people believe the royal family has become bloated, and at times unclear about who is working on behalf of the crown and who is simply part of the family by marriage. This confusion, according to William, risks weakening the monarchy's authority and its connection with the public. In his mind, the institution should be clearly defined. Representatives of the crown should be limited to those who are in the direct line of succession or have been appointed to specific working roles. Anything outside of that could be seen as favoritism, or worse, a misuse of public trust. The inclusion of Queen Camilla's children and grandchildren in royal ceremonies, even symbolically, had become an increasingly visible example of what William believes needs to change. Although these family members have never been officially recognized as part of the royal household, their appearance at events like King Charles's coronation, and in particular, their roles as pages of honor, sent a message that William found problematic. Sources familiar with internal discussions say that William was uncomfortable with how these appearances blurred the lines between public duty and personal preference. While he has always maintained a respectful relationship with Camilla, his stance has consistently been that her family, while personally important, should not be presented to the public as part of the monarchy's official structure. This philosophy extends beyond Camilla's family. In recent months, there have been behind-the-scenes changes across the palace. Ceremonial rosters have been revised, public engagements have been reassigned, internal communications have been updated to clarify the roles of various individuals associated with the royal family. These changes, while often small in appearance, are part of a much larger shift in approach, one that reflects William's growing authority and his focus on preserving the monarchy's traditional identity. At the core of William's vision is the belief that the monarchy must be built on a foundation of duty, lineage, and clarity. This perspective is said to have been shaped by the examples of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, who both championed a disciplined and understated model of royal service. Their approach was less about personal expression and more about responsibility, continuity, and institutional stability. William, according to those close to him, sees himself as continuing that legacy. He wants the monarchy to remain relevant, but not at the expense of its identity. In an era where public trust is fragile and social media can quickly amplify controversy, he believes the royal family cannot afford to appear confused or overly sentimental. The lines must be drawn, and roles must be clear. This doesn't mean William lacks compassion. Those who have worked with him say he is thoughtful and considerate behind closed doors, especially when dealing with family matters. But when it comes to the crown, he is known to take a firm stance. His belief is that the royal family serves the public, not the other way around. If the public begins to question the integrity or purpose of the monarchy, then the entire institution could be at risk. The decision to scale back Camilla's family's visibility was, in many ways, a reflection of this belief. It was not intended to hurt or humiliate, but rather to set a precedent. The monarchy, as William sees it, must be protected from becoming too intertwined with the personal lives of its members. Camilla's family, though respected and loved in private, were never meant to have a public-facing role in the monarchy. Their increasing presence created ambiguity, and William decided it was time to bring clarity. Some royal watchers have pointed out that this move may signal a more corporate style of leadership. one that prioritizes structure and public perception over personal emotion. While that may sound cold to some, others believe it's necessary. The British monarchy has faced many challenges in recent decades, from public scandals to changing social attitudes. To survive, it must adapt, but not by losing sight of its core values. What's becoming clear is that William's approach is very different from that of his father. King Charles, known for his emotional depth and tendency to avoid direct confrontation, has often chosen to preserve family harmony over institutional rigidity. He is described by insiders as someone who values loyalty and connection, sometimes even at the cost of structure. For example, his support of Camilla's family was reportedly driven more by affection than by constitutional logic. William, by contrast, takes a more modern, strategic view. He respects the emotional bonds within the family, but sees the monarchy as something bigger than any one person's feelings. It's not about who someone loves or how long they've been part of the family. It's about who represents the nation and under what authority. This emerging contrast between father and son has created a delicate balancing act within the palace. While Charles remains king, William's influence is growing steadily. Advisors say there's been a noticeable shift in who makes final decisions and how those decisions are communicated. William has begun to lead more meetings, approve more public-facing roles, and guide the long-term planning of royal engagements. His mark on the institution is already becoming visible. The question now is how these changes will affect the royal family as a whole. Will this more defined, structured approach strengthen public confidence? Or will it alienate those who once saw the monarchy as a family first and an institution second? Only time will tell. But what's certain is that Prince William is no longer just preparing to be king. He's already shaping what the monarchy will look like when his time comes. The decision involving Camilla's family may have been the first major example of this new direction, but it likely won't be the last. As William continues to take on more responsibility, the public can expect to see further changes, perhaps subtle, perhaps significant, designed to restore a sense of order and purpose to an institution that has, at times, appeared adrift. Some insiders say that this shift is a return to form. Others view it as a risk, potentially opening up new tensions within a family already tested by years of drama. But whatever the opinion, the reality remains that a transformation is happening, and at the center of it is a future monarch who believes that clarity, discipline, and lineage are the cornerstones of the royal future. Sources close to Queen Camilla describe her reaction as one of deep hurt and frustration. Upon receiving news of the change, Camilla was reportedly caught off guard. The lack of a private conversation beforehand made the action feel abrupt and impersonal. According to staff at Clarence House, the Queen Consort was visibly shaken. She canceled engagements, withdrew from meetings, and spent hours pacing in silence. Some aides noted that she kept asking the same question repeatedly. Why now? Camilla had, in her view, spent nearly 2 decades carefully building trust with the public and carving out a dignified space for herself in the royal family. For her, this was not just about ceremonial appearances or honorary mentions. It was about legacy, how her children and grandchildren would be remembered as part of her story within the royal timeline. To see that legacy quietly stripped away was not only upsetting, but, as some describe, profoundly disorienting. Behind closed doors, she reportedly vented her anger, not only at the decision, but at how it was delivered. It wasn't the loss of titles that stung the most, it was the message it sent. To her, it felt like an erasure of her personal journey and a denial of the quiet role her family had played in supporting her through the challenges of royal life. One particularly emotional moment, according to insiders, came when Camilla allegedly told a close confidant that this was Diana's revenge through him, referring to the late Princess of Wales and her fraught history with Camilla. While no one within the palace has confirmed that exact quote, it captures the intensity of emotion that has reportedly surrounded this decision. Camilla is also said to believe that Princess Kate played a supportive role in backing William's decision. While their relationship has always been described as polite and professional, it was never particularly close. Now, with Camilla feeling isolated and hurt, that distance seems to have grown. At a recent public engagement, onlookers noted the lack of interaction between the two women. While small, these moments haven't gone unnoticed by royal watchers. For King Charles, the situation presents a complex dilemma. Known for his preference for harmony and his tendency to avoid direct conflict, Charles now finds himself stuck between his wife and his son. Those close to the king say he is emotionally drained, struggling with his health, and torn between preserving family unity and supporting a structural change that aligns with the future of the monarchy. Reports suggest that Charles attempted to mediate the situation behind the scenes. He is believed to have spoken with William in private, encouraging a softer approach or at least a more discreet rollout of the changes. But William, according to palace insiders, stood firm. He told his father that transparency is the point, arguing that the monarchy needed clear boundaries, especially when it came to public representation. For Charles, William's firm stance was both reassuring and troubling. On one hand, it showed that his son was prepared to lead and make difficult decisions. On the other, it revealed a future in which compassion might be sacrificed in the name of order. The contrast between father and son could not be more apparent. Where Charles prefers quiet diplomacy, William opts for direct action. The impact of this decision is also being felt throughout the wider royal household. Staff members who worked closely with Camilla's family have been reassigned or had their roles adjusted. Departments responsible for organizing ceremonial events have updated their protocols to exclude non-blood relatives from invitations and formal recognition. It's not just about who gets a seat at royal events anymore. It's about who is allowed to be seen as part of the institution. The most symbolic change came quietly and without fanfare. Observers of the official royal family website noticed that references to Camilla's extended family had been removed. A section that once acknowledged her children and grandchildren no longer appears in the current or future event planning notes. It's a small change in the digital world, but it speaks volumes about the shift in narrative. This level of precision and formality suggests that William is not acting out of emotion, but with a clear, long-term strategy. He wants the monarchy to stand on firm ground, built on direct lineage and constitutional relevance. Anything outside of that, no matter how familiar or beloved, is seen as a potential weakness in an age of intense public scrutiny. The question many are now asking is whether this strategy will prove effective, or whether it risks alienating key figures within the family. The monarchy has always walked a delicate line between duty and personal connection. For much of its modern history, its success has depended on balancing those two forces. William appears to be tipping the scales decisively toward duty, even if it causes friction behind palace walls. Some commentators believe this is a necessary evolution. In an era where transparency is demanded and public support is essential, clarity of purpose is vital. They argue that the monarchy cannot afford to be seen as playing favorites or extending privileges to those outside the line of succession. For these critics, William's move is not harsh, it's honest. Others, however, worry that something important is being lost in the process. The monarchy, they say, is not just an institution, it is a family. And families are made up of more than bloodlines. In removing Camilla's family from ceremonial life, there is concern that the monarchy is becoming colder, more corporate, and less relatable. Regardless of perspective, there is no denying that a new tone is being set. William is establishing boundaries that previous generations were unwilling to enforce. He is doing so quietly, often without public explanation, but with unmistakable intent. His reign has not yet begun, but its shadow is already stretching across the palace. Camilla, for her part, is said to be considering how to manage her legacy in a changing royal landscape. Some insiders say she has begun speaking with trusted advisors about shaping a narrative that honors her contributions, regardless of formal recognition. There are even whispers that she may seek to document her story in some form, perhaps through memoirs or authorized interviews. While nothing has been confirmed, the idea reflects a growing sense of independence as she navigates her place in a new royal order. For now, King Charles remains largely silent. His public appearances continue, and he maintains his duties, but his internal struggle is becoming more apparent. He knows that his son is acting in what he believes is the monarchy's best interest. At the same time, he sees the emotional toll it's taking on his wife and on the unity of the family. The future of the monarchy appears to be moving in a clear direction. It will be smaller, more defined, and firmly rooted in traditional lines of succession. Camilla's family, once quietly welcomed into the margins of royal life, has now been placed outside the official fold. There was no announcement, no confrontation, just a series of changes that spoke louder than words. What comes next will depend not only on how these changes are received by the public, but on how the family responds behind the scenes. If Charles chooses to remain silent, it may further solidify William's growing influence. If he chooses to intervene, it could risk undermining the very order William is trying to build.